Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to welcome you back to another edition of Foreclosurepedia Podcast. Foreclosurepedia Podcast premieres each Sunday evening at 2300 hours. Been a whole lot going on since I've been gone. I've been, over in Middle Tennessee working with a couple of investors flipping homes, so my normally harsh voice with the cough is going to be even worse. I did some painting over there and decided not to wear a respirator, so we'll just go ahead and press on through it. Tonight's podcast is going to be focused in on some issues dealing with the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development. You can see the lead story here: why the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development is corrupt. Now, I do not believe that this is, and it is my opinion. I believe statistically, if you look across the board and you look at all of the former secretaries of housing and urban development, you're going to find a good percentage of those secretaries have either resigned under indictment or they've resigned pending indictment. And I really don't anticipate it to be any different this go around. But that's not really the story I want to get into. What I want to get into tonight is talking about why federal contracting, when we work upon as contractors these contracts that HUD holds and sends out to the national order mills, these are federal contracts. This is the only portion of the United States government within federal contracting that the contractors and the subcontractors are afforded absolutely no legal rights whatsoever. There's no doctrine of privity. There is nothing. And that term, doctrine of privity, originates from a gentleman by the name of Craig Karnes. Craig Karnes is the director of the M&M for HUD. He's down in Atlanta, Georgia, and for a period of time I actually had a fairly good working relationship with him. I felt we had as any road in life, it had had its twists and turns, its ups and downs, but where it had finally come to a head was when with A to Z Field Services, based out of Ohio, they decided to come forward with their vendor fraud policy. And if you're not familiar with that, simply spin through some of the videos on the Foreclosurepedia YouTube channel or here on the Foreclosurepedia website, and you can find out what that document is. In essence, this document forced contractors to report upon other contractors based upon morals. And I felt that that could quite easily become a slippery slope. For example, if you didn't like homosexuals, you would have to report to inform upon them. If you did not like African Americans, you needed to report on that. If you did not like Hispanic Americans, you needed to report upon that. If you did not like Orientals, if you didn't like anybody who wasn't white, you needed to really put the screws to those sons of bitches, and A to Z was going to help you do that. Now, how do I come up with that theory? Well, when I look at the leadership at A to Z, I do not see anybody who is anything other than white who runs A to Z. So that's the only place I can, draw that. I'm going to presume that they're Christians, so I would presume that it might be immoral if they were Muslim, if they were Buddhist, if they studied Wicca. Perhaps if they were like myself, agnostic and believed in nothing, well, hell, I'd have had to report on myself. We also all know, or you will if you actually go back and review the material, that additionally A to Z Field Services was granting itself police powers. And those powers were going to allow them to kick in doors and to begin to seize documents at any hour of the day or night, with or without your presence, and obviously without a lawyer and without warrant. I addressed these concerns to Craig Karnes, the director of M&M at HUD. And all he had to say was that he was going to refer it to the GTR and he could not comment further. The GTR, Golf Tango Romeo, is the government technical representative. What that is a punk's way out. That's a little bitch saying that he doesn't want to make any changes. He doesn't want to ruffle any feathers. That wasn't good enough for me. I bumped that up to Washington, D.C. underneath the Deputy Secretary of HUD's office for the Office of Small Disadvantaged Businesses, Mishoma Hayes. And there was a gentleman there by the name of Elliot. Must be her little gopher, maybe her secretary. I don't know who he is. Don't really give two shits either. But this kid said, fax us the document. So I did. 3rd of July. Heard nothing. I called back after the holiday. You know, it's wonderful that my tax dollars pay these people, Craig Karnes and his minion up in D.C., pay them for their holidays, but I still work through the holidays. But anyway, I figured, you know, they came back, probably reviewed the documents, actually spoke with Miss Hayes. She said, yeah, we got the fax. Can you email this to me? I said, sure. So I took time out of my day, free of charge, emailed it. Heard nothing. Let another week go by. Heard nothing. Emailed. Got no email response. So I called yesterday on the 30th of July, and Miss Hayes, and I want to interject here. I think this is what government officials do not understand. I pay their salary. Now, let me be very clear there. I pay their salary. I'm a taxpayer. They may serve at the will and the leisure of the President of the United States. However, I am a taxpayer. And even the President himself is paid by and through my taxes. When you have a policy, that is calculated in such a manner to deprive the civil rights in a calculated manner, and it is being implemented by the United States government, it poses a clear and present danger to the Constitution of the United States. Any government official, and any of you out there who are listening to my voice this evening who have served honorably in the United States Armed Forces know that both government civil servants and those of us whom are and were in the United States military swore to uphold and defend and protect the Constitution of the United States against enemies, both foreign and domestic. I am not saying Mr. Karnes is an enemy. I am not saying Miss Hayes is an enemy. I am saying that the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development has full knowledge now of a document in their possession that a contractor whom is being paid by HUD, and let's not forget, where does HUD get that money? HUD gets that money from me, from you, and from everybody in the United States of America that pays taxes. They serve at our leisure. End of conversation. We're not going to go any further about this. HUD is at minimum turning a blind eye to a conspiracy that is ongoing. Are they furthering that conspiracy? In my humble opinion, they certainly aren't attempting to end it. That's my rant about A to Z and their vendor fraud policy, and it's not going to stop. It is never going to stop until A to Z takes down that policy. If I put together a document, and I work for the United States government, and I put a document out like that, there's a good chance I'd have suits and ties kicking in my door. So A to Z Field Services, in my opinion, needs to be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. And that's why this evening I want to talk to everybody about the problems with HUD contracting. These problems have gone on too long. Until Foreclosurepedia came along, there was nobody out there who would address these situations. And these situations are very important and they're very, very critical. What happened was the contractors would come along, they'd do a little bit of work, get a little bit of money. Nobody ever communicated amongst themselves. And so these nationals and these regionals and these otherwise unspecified order mills, they had a field day, folks. We're talking trillions of dollars when you add it all up, with a T. No congressional oversight. When you look at FHA, the Federal Housing Administration, and when you take into consideration the fact that Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac should no longer even be insuring any of the loans out there, and they're up in upwards of $1.1 trillion. This is a quagmire, and this is a mess. So as we look here today, I want you to take a look at this. If you're in regular federal contracting, there's a new rule that just went in, that will go into effect. This is from the 2010 Small Business Jobs Act law. On August 15th, any contractors are required to notify their contracting officers when they fail to utilize their subcontractors. And why? Because this rule is designed to stop prime contractors from using and abusing subcontractors so that more federal dollars will actually trickle down to small businesses. Guess what? Doesn't apply to you in HUD. You know why? You get no rights. You get nothing. If you're listening to my voice tonight, you know the best thing you can do? You need to pick up your phone. You need to call your congressperson. You need to call your senator. You need to call your local, your county, and your state governments, and you need to inform them that you're not going to tolerate this anymore. Here you are, as a contractor. You're the person actually doing the work. You know what these other people are doing? You know what these order mills are doing? They're shuffling paper. On a good day, 11 cents of every government dollar actually hits the ground. We're not even going to talk about the violations of the Service Contract Act here this evening. Now, I spoke with Mr. Karnes about that as well. And what is actually going to take place over the next couple of podcast episodes is I'm actually going to be releasing in a redacted form the material of those conversations. This is a government official whom gave me his word that there was going to be change. There is not going to be any change. HUD is going to continue to turn a blind eye to the corruption that is ongoing in federal contracting. Make no mistake about those words whatsoever. Forget the fact that you are a contractor for a moment. If you are a citizen of the United States of America, your tax dollars are going down a black hole in a bottomless pit. You're paying to screw yourself. Don't take my word for it. Contact your congressperson, contact your senator, have them look into this, because there needs to be regulation. There needs to be congressional oversight, because it is a fact that Craig Karnes, the director of the M&M, is not able or does not want to bring any light, bring any transparency into the HUD contracting arena. I can draw no other conclusion, nor can you if you're listening to me tonight and take the time to do the research. This is a problem. This is a pervasive problem. It needs to be changed. There's been a quick podcast on this tonight. We're going to do a couple others back to back. We have one coming up over the weekend where we're going to have some live calls come in. We're actually going to talk to some of you folks out there in the field. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, feel free to reach out to me at coo@foreclosurepedia.org. Help me help you. Get in touch. Speak with your congresspersons. Speak with your senators. Launch and file your complaints against A to Z Field Services and begin a petition to have Craig Karnes removed as director. At bare minimum, he should be removed for dereliction of duty. Thank you.